Hello again and welcome to DanWhiteBooks, the book review channel where we add insight into the worlds of literature, both for those who do read and those who don't. We're walking down the classical alley again today with a massively popular work and often heavily studied work by an author called J.D Salinger. Today I review The Catcher in the Rye. This is another book that I'd seen crop up on multiple reading lists, and a work that also seemed to serve a heavy influence in literature classrooms. I went in blind and knew nothing but the title, which gave me no indication of what I was about to read. In fact, I'll be completely honest, I didn't even know what genre this book was. The edit I have doesn't even feature a blurb, so when I started reading this one, my mind truly was a blank canvas. But is it any good? Well, that as ever will be an answer with no straightforward conclusion. Reading these older works from a modern perspective can at times be rather frustrating, but the destination is always very thought-provoking. The Catcher in the Rye tells the tale of a young 16-year-old boy called Holden Caulfield. You spend all of your time with this character and learn very deeply of his perceptiveness to the outside world. For context, this book was published way back in 1951 and takes place in America around the same period. It speaks of a boy who is ambling around younger life with no clue or idea what to do and a mass amount of cynicism to go with it. The tale begins with Holden recalling the time he was kicked out of Pensy Prep School and the events that followed thereafter. Pensy is one in a long list of schools that Holden has been thrown out of simply for lack of effort and completely failing grades, bar English. All readers rejoice. This is quite a tricky book to explain story-wise because not a lot happens throughout the tale. It is a series of thoughts and ideas along with little tales of human interaction. Over 3 days, Holden wanders around New York City like a bag floating in the breeze. There is no place he really belongs, and you get the strong indication that he's living a life without purpose or meaning. Much like that floating bag, he is aimlessly going from one place to the next. He is lost, and in an adult world that does not see things from his own perspective. Author Salinger is capturing in this work that moment of confusion we face, some far worse than others, where we progress from a teenager to an adult, but also the alienation one can feel in later life. The world to Holden is a foreign landscape, and with little friends, he is like a twig floating down an endless stream. So to review this book in terms of its story alone is quite a hard thing, because I don't feel at all the author intended the reader to have a thrilling joyride where every page turn is like a pin to the heart. No, it's not that at all. This book is trying to get you to empathize with a boy who is naive, lost, and ultimately very depressed. It is trying to get you to see how utterly confusing the world can be when you really have no purpose or being, and it does that very well. Holden often serves up his views and excuses for disliking people or not getting on with others. He doesn't admit that his failures at school are partly his own responsibility and instead talks in a manner that blames the teachers or the pupils. To anyone reading this in later life, it may be easy to see how this boy is severely dissatisfied with the world around him and has quite frankly lost hope. He doesn't wish to conform with anything that appears the norm, as this depresses him. It may also be clear to see that Holden is making excuses for everything. In fact, Holden may annoy the hell out of you at times because he speaks in a very self-righteous manner, yet at the same time he also comes across so incredibly naive. He exaggerates things and skirts around questions. You want to help him, and the author realizes this, adding minor characters that attempt to do just that, but they don't really succeed. Holden still feels incredibly misunderstood, and it's all rather sad. The beauty in this book isn't much in the narrative, but rather the perspective. You see a world through the eyes of a boy who picks up on the negative and often what he calls the phoniness of others. He ambles through a roaring world that can be dark and cold. He suggests moving away and living on a ranch multiple times, but you can feel this is all just a coping mechanism for an individual who is struggling to catch light in anything and just wishes to escape from a world that feels more akin to Mars than that of home. It subtly catches the confusion of younger life and makes you remember perhaps how you yourself used to be so long ago, and certainly how alienation can lead a person to a very dark and unforgiving place. All of this makes for a very difficult book to review because story-wise I can see this probably would bore a lot of people. It is a book where big events don't happen. The whole is far greater than the individual parts. I will admit, halfway in, I was confused. I was thinking, what is this? When is something going to happen? But I pressed on, and the more time I spent with Holden and with his jaded perspective, the more I related to personal times gone. For a book written in the 1950s, the themes mentioned here must have been quite eye-opening, and considering this book is still an incredibly popular work, they were no doubt relatable to a great many of people. At a time where there was likely a get on and shut up attitude towards mental health and or feelings of isolation, I truly feel the author was trying to bring attention to the alienation people can feel in the world, particularly during a period where such topics would have been very hard to discuss. So, with all things considered, from my perspective and from a modern setting, I would rate this book a 75 out of 100. Its criticisms are difficult for me to discuss because it is a rather uneventful story, but at the same time I can see that it isn't trying to be some type of earth-shattering thriller. That's not the point at all. The strength of this book comes from its ability to empathise with those who have felt so truly lost, even in a sea of people. And by God, does it do that well. My friends, thank you very much for watching. We recently hit 100 subscribers. I appreciate all of the support, and I will see you here again soon for another book review and discussion. Until then, bye-bye.